In this episode of Biblical Unlocks, we will go through a chapter of the Bible and make it make sense in your life today. Studies routinely show that reading your Bible regularly significantly lowers symptoms of depression, anxiety, and anger, whilst also increasing forgiveness, compassion, and a sense of purpose. So if you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Biblical Unlocks. Today we're going through Genesis chapter 14, where we see Abram rescuing Lot and meeting a new character in this wonderful development, who is Melchizedek. So, this is actually the first war recorded in the Bible, and we have a coalition of kings fighting over power and territory in the Jordan Valley. Lot, who is Abram's nephew, remember, he gets caught up and taken captive, and Abram rescues Lot and meets a new king priest whose name is Melchizedek. And this chapter is going to connect deeply with the idea of spiritual warfare. We're going to see Christ's priesthood and some cross-references about Jesus Christ in this particular passage, and God's blessing of faithfulness. So, let's take a look and read. We have a lot of stuff here, and there's going to be a lot of stuff, a lot of names, so it's okay if we get a little bit lost with some of this stuff, but I'm going to go into deep detail into the main point, which is Abram's courage and faith, the appearance of Melchizedek, and then his integrity later on. So, in the days of King Amraphel of Shinar, King Arioch of Elasar, King Chedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goim. These kings made war with King Bera of Sodom, King Bersha of Gomorrah, King Shinab of Admah, King Shemeber of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these joined forces in the valley of Shittim, that is the Dead Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him came and subdued Rephaim in the Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Shavah-Kiriathaim, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as El Paran, on the edge of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En-Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and subdued all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out, and they joined battle in the valley of Siddim, with King Chedorlaomer of Elam, King Tidal of Goim, King Amraphel of Shinar, and King Arioch of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled into the hill country. So the enemy took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and went away. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who lived in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Okay, so clearly we're seeing a lot of kings here, fighting over power territory in the Jordan Valley. Whilst it would be good to know every single individual here so that we could know perhaps if they make a guest appearance later in the Bible, I think the more important thing is to remember that there is power struggles, there's fighting. But did you notice that in verse 10 we saw, now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as some of the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled into the hill country. So it's like unassuming pits that you fall into as you're running away. We see something like this with Joseph, like they throw him into a pit, but that's because someone else threw him into a pit. In this case, these are just unassuming pits present in the valley that they're falling into. So it's almost as if when you're hungry and struggling for power in one aspect, you, as we saw in Genesis chapter 4 with Canaan, and Abel, sorry, not Canaan, Cain and Abel, sin is always lurking at the door, and you must master it. And if you don't, then this is what happens. Sin is always crouching at the door, lurking, and it wants your soul. So the enemy took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions and went away. They also took Lot, the son of Abram's brother, who lived in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Okay, now we're going to see Abram's courage and faith in verses 13 to 16. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and of Aner. These were the allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and routed them back and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his nephew Lot with his goods, and the women and the people. Okay, so clearly we see that he trusts God. He trusts that God is going to protect him, because there is a big army against his small 318-man force. Okay, and he devised them by night, and he and his servants routed them to Hobah, and he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his nephew Lot and the women and the people. So clearly what we're seeing is a really important part of the book where he has faith, and not only faith but dependence on his on God in his actions. And I have a little bit of a story about this, which we'll go into a little bit later. Actually, no, I'll go through it now. We see Abraham's courage, right? He took 318 trained men against multiple kings in one. So it's a miraculous victory. That's the important thing to remember here. So miraculous victory, awesome. But something that's important here is this happens throughout history. I don't know if you've seen or if you've heard about the story of Constantine the Great. But Constantine the Great, basically he was this Roman emperor. Now, the Roman emperors before him were ferociously against and ferocious persecutors of Christians, right? We talked about Nero, the Emperor Nero, who would burn Christians as candles in his garden. So he's a bit nuts. But Constantine the Great was different. He actually saw a vision, right? And he saw a vision, a supernatural experience before his battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 AD. And according to two Roman historians, who are Eusebius and Lactantius, Constantine saw a vision of the Christian cross in the sky. And some sources accompany this, like some sources also say that the vision was accompanied by the phrase, "By this conquer." So what he did was he put the cross, the Christian cross, on his shields, and he won the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. And the vision was integral to his conversion to Christianity and his Christianization of the Roman Empire. And this has been seen throughout history, where you have a ruler sees a vision of Christianity, of Jesus or a cross, for example, and because of this he converted, and his conversion changed the demographics, particularly the religious demographics of the Roman Empire, causing immense conversions. And again, this is similar to what we see in the Bible as well. We saw this in Judges 7, right? Gideon wins a miraculous victory with just a very small army, and as a more simple note, God gives victory to those who trust Him. You know, that's an interesting message here. Okay, it's not really interesting, but it is true, and truth is the most important thing. We have verses 17 to 24, and we'll get into more interesting biblical unlocks here. Verses 17, after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer, the kings and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Sheva, that is the king's valley, and King Melchizedek of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God the Most High. he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. Then the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have sworn to God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, so that you might not say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the young men who went with me, Aner, Eshol, and Mamre. Let them take their share. Okay, cool. I want to talk about Melchizedek a little bit. Melchizedek means king of righteousness. Melchi means king. Zedek means righteousness. King of Salem means obviously Salam, Shalom, peace, Jerusalem. And you can see Jerusalem, Salem, the peace, the Salem in Jerusalem. Interestingly, we saw King Melchizedek brought out bread and wine, which is foreshadowing the Lord's Supper, when Jesus Christ brings out wine and bread during his Last Supper. We have the priest of God the Most High, right? Do you see this? He was priest of God the Most High, suggesting that there was true priesthood before the law. Okay, we saw this here. And Abram gives him a tithe. You see that Abram gives him 1/10 of everything to Melchizedek. But the interesting thing is the cross-reference in Psalm 110:4, which states, The Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So this Melchizedek, or the order of Melchizedek, is important because this is going to talk about, this is important because this is the order of Christ, the priestly order of Christ, or the eternal priesthood of Christ. And we see this in Hebrews chapter 7. And the reason why is because the author of Hebrews had an expert knowledge of the Old Testament, right? And he mentioned that Melchizedek, we would see another priest like Melchizedek come later. So this is what he writes in Hebrews chapter 7. This, Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham as he was returning from defeating the kings and blessed him. So again, this is showing his expert knowledge of Genesis chapter 14. And he's writing, And to him Abraham apportioned 1/10 of everything. His name in his first place means king of righteousness. Next he is also king of Salem, that is king of peace, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. But resembling the Son of God, he remains king forever. See how great he is. Even Abraham the patriarch gave him 1/10 of the spoils, and those descendants of Levi who receive the priestly office have a commandment in the law to collect tithes. But from the people, that is, from their kindred, though these also are descended from Abraham. But this man, who does not belong to their ancestry, collected tithes from Abraham and blessed him who had received the promises. It is beyond dispute that the inferior is blessed by the superior. In the one case, tithes are received by the ones who are mortal, in the other by one whom it is testified that he lives. One might even say that Levi himself, who received tithes, paid tithes through Abraham, for he was still in the loins of his ancestor when Melchizedek met him. This is the most important part though. Now, if perfection had been attainable through the Levitical priesthood, for the people received the law under this priesthood, what further need would there have been to speak of another priest arising according to the order of Melchizedek, rather than the one according to Aaron? For when there is a change in a priesthood, there is necessarily a change in the law as well. So it's basically saying, hey, if people could become perfect, that is, you could stop sinning under this priesthood, why was there need for another priesthood according to the order of Aaron rather than the order of Melchizedek? Now the one whom these things are spoken belonged to another tribe, from which no one has ever served at the altar. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, and in connection with that tribe Moses said nothing about priests. It is even more obvious when another priest arises resembling Melchizedek, one who has become a priest not through legal requirement concerning physical descent, but through the power of an indestructible life, for it is attested of him, and this is what we just read in Psalm chapter 110 verse 4, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." And there is on the one hand the abrogation of an earlier commandment because it was weak and ineffectual, for the law made nothing perfect. There is on the other hand the introduction of a better hope through which we approach God. This was confirmed with an oath, for others had become priests without an oath, but this one became a priest with an oath, because of the one who said to him, "The Lord has sworn, and will not change his mind. You are a priest forever." Accordingly, Jesus has also become the guarantor of a better covenant. Furthermore, the former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office, but he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able for all time to save those who approach God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. For it was fitting that we should have such a high priest, holy, blameless, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. Unlike the other high priest, he has no need to offer sacrifices day in and day out, first for his own sins and then for those of his people. This he did once for all when he offered himself. For the law appoints as high priests humans who are subject to weakness, but the word of the oath, which came later than the law, appoints a son who has made them perfect forever. Made them perfect forever. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 28. Important. All of this is talking about the fact that Abram and Melchizedek in certain ways are reflecting, or in another way they are foreshadowing Jesus Christ. And the reason why is because Christ rescues us from our bondage to sin. Abram rescues Lot in the bondage of these sinful kings, right? Melchizedek literally means king of righteousness, and he's a mysterious eternal priest who comes from nowhere, right? And he even mentions this, right? He had neither having a beginning of days nor an end of life, right? Having no beginning or end. He's the first and the last. Who else is the first and the last? Jesus Christ, obviously. And he blesses Abram with bread and wine. Again, the bread of life and the wine which we saw at the Last Supper. And there are two kings, right? There's the king of Sodom and there's the king of Salem. King of Sodom and the king of Salem. The king of Sodom is the king of the world, the flesh. Who is the king of the world? We read this in Revelation chapter 17, maybe. We read this in Revelation. Sodom, the king of this world, is Satan. The king of Salem, righteousness and peace. And every believer must choose their allegiance to either one or the other. So, this is the first war in Scripture showing the reality of spiritual warfare. But the important thing here is there's two contrasts. There's a contrast of two kings. And you have to show who your allegiance is to. The king of this world or the king of righteousness. You have to make your decision. Who are you fighting for in this spiritual war? So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help you keep up your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. I upload daily, so if you don't want to miss tomorrow's episode, feel free to rate the show and follow. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And always remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.